I will go ahead and call the Centerton Board of Zoning Adjustment to order for May 18th of 2021 with a roll call.
Tony Davis,
I'm here.
Jerry Harris,
Here.
Amber Beal,
Here.
Joey Engel,
Here.
Ben Lewis,
Here.
John Sessoms,
Here.
Devin Murphy,
Here.
Craig Langford,
Here.
and Chairman Jeff Seifarth.
And I'm here as well. One and only thing on the agenda this evening is the approval of the BZA minutes from 5/4 of 2021. If there are no revisions, or if there are, I guess I would entertain a motion.
This is Joey. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
This is Craig. I'll second.
Motion and a second. Anyone not in favor? All right, no old business, no new business. Our next meeting is TBD, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
This is Jerry. I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
This is Amber. I'll second.
John, I'll second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Anyone opposed? All right, let's move over into our planning commission meeting. Diane's like, slow down. So we'll go ahead and call the City of Centerton Planning Commission for May 18th of 2021 with a roll call.
Tony Davis,
I'm here.
Jerry Harris,
Here.
Amber Beal,
Here.
Joey Engel,
Here.
Ben Lewis,
Here.
John Sessoms,
Here.
Devin Murphy,
Here.
Craig Langford,
Here.
and Chairman Jeff Seifarth.
And Jeff's here as well. I think Diane is the slide next that tells people how to participate. So I think we always kind of go down that route. This is a public forum, and there will be opportunities this evening to speak. And so if you happen to join virtually, there's a raise the hand, a little yellow hand at the bottom of the screen. You can press that and be recognized. Or if you join by phone, you can press *9, and that will allow us to call on you as well, typically by phone number. And we'll repeat this a couple different times, but just wanted to start the meeting out, give everybody a heads up. First thing on the agenda this evening is the approval of the minutes from the 5/4/21 meeting.
This is Jerry. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of 5/4/21.
This is John. I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? All right, thank you guys. Next on the agenda this evening is the ratification of administrative approvals. Was there any questions from any of the commissioners on any of the approvals?
Just a note, Jeff, that the Callis track split was non-conforming with the existing zoning of agricultural, so they were required to do a rezone, which you all will consider later in the agenda.
Thank you. If there are no questions or any other comments, then I would entertain a motion to approve the ratification for the admin approvals.
This is Amber.
This is John.
I'll
I'll
make a
motion.
motion to approve the ratification of administrative approvals.
This is John. I'll second.
Motion in a second. Anyone opposed? All right, thank you guys. Old business is the Silverleaf going to take place tonight? It was tentative.
I think we've got it all done and ready to go for tonight.
Okay. If that's the case, then what I would do is we tabled it, I believe, last time. So we need to have a motion to bring it back, if I remember correctly. So with that, I would entertain a motion to bring back the Silverleaf preliminary plat, the adjacent street improvements.
This Jerry, I make a motion to bring back to the table SUB 21-03 Silverleaf Glen plat.
This is Joey. I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? All right, Diane, are you going to kick it off, or Rick, you going to kick it off?
And we also have Patrick Foy, the engineer for the project. So
Okay.
Rick, if you want to start.
It's basically, we're having to build an improved section along the new roadway. I've asked them to build the first 100 foot to full width, full section, because that's where the drain will come from the detention pond. Plus we have sewer lines and everything else coming there. I didn't want that to be rebuilt. From that point on north, we have a similar issue that we've had on a lot of projects. We're only collecting half the right of way. And so we're building an improved section, 24 foot of roadway, 2 foot of gravel shoulders. This will be done during phase 2. He's going to do a bond at this point to cover it to phase 2, but he'll build it. Basically, that's it, guys. So we went through all the numbers, came up with the numbers where he was actually exceeding what would be required on a half street improvement by like $12,000. I think they said they would write that off as a negligible amount. It's just basically the best we can do at this point.
All right, thanks, Rick. Patrick or Diane, do you have any pictures that shows us how far back that 100 feet goes? Because if I remember correctly, there's a development on the right-hand side, the other side of the road as well, farther back. Is that correct?
It's not going to that, no, sir.
Okay.
No, it is, I'm trying to keep up with all my clicking. It is right down in this area. It ends right about here for that first 100 feet that they're going to build with phase 1. And then phase 2, they'll go ahead and build the entire thing. But like Rick said, this will be a full section here. And they're also going to be improving the entire section along Bush Road with phase 1.
Okay.
And I think John Wary, I'm assuming the John is John Wary, has his hand up and he worked on this. So want me to allow him to speak also?
Yes. John, are you there?
This is
Okay,
John.
thank you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I couldn't find the unmute button. So I think Donna and Rick have generally described what the agreement is. Developer's going to dedicate right away for Bush Road per the master and Wade Drive per the master street plan. And then the intent would be to improve Bush Road. There you go. There's the typical sections with phase 1 and improve and build the first 100 feet of Wade Drive with phase 1. And also with phase 1, then they would put up some kind of surety for the remaining portions of Wade Drive.
Thanks, John. How much of that drive was the original proposal? Was it 100 feet at that point? I don't remember off the top of my head.
The original proposal was to build 100 feet, but it was a modified section consisting of 24 foot of pavement with gravel shoulders. The revised proposal will build the first 100 feet, a full section, 37 feet wide, curb and gutter back-to-back storm drain, and 10-foot trails on both sides. And then the modified section for phase 2 would be a 24 foot paved section with gravel shoulders and the 10-foot trail all the way up the west side.
Okay.
In situations like this, the city's having to take on the responsibility of getting this additional right of way along that first 100 foot. So that's an issue for us to make sure that we get that done. For the remainder of the road that's not adjacent to the subdivision to the north, we have to get temporary construction easements to take out the fence and taper it down on their property, and the fences will have to be put back and all this. It's not an easy construction process when we're in limited right of way like this.
Any questions or comments from any of the commissioners?
No, we, as staff, had one question for Brian. I know he had court all day today, so you probably didn't see the email, but they
I have not.
are,
I apologize.
well, they are proposing a letter of credit and not a bond. So I wanted you to weigh in on that.
Yeah, personally, I prefer bonds over letter of credit. It just seems to me, and I think there's just conflicting opinions between attorneys and whatnot. My personal opinion is, even though they're irrevocable letters of credit, I've seen in the past where banks have revoked them prior to them being done. So that is my preference. I'd be happy to discuss later once I know a little bit more. Did I lose you guys?
Nope.
No,
Okay.
I was trying to
Okay.
unmute and it was not working.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that was the only thing that staff really had in question today when we got this, was just the letter of credit and the bond. And Rick, Brian, John, I don't know if that's something you guys want to hammer out. Planning Commission wants to hammer out and say, no, we want this for the city. That's up to you guys. But as far as the overall document, I think we finally got it all straightened out, and everybody's gonna, we're all gonna get a good road out of this project. So
So if you're
at least I
asking my
hope so,
legal
Rick.
opinion, it would be bond in lieu of a letter of credit.
John Wary or Patrick, I'm assuming that y'all sent the email. I haven't seen that email.
What's that, Jeff?
Any thoughts or comments on that?
Well, I guess I would like, if possible, to visit with Brian about this a little bit more. I'm not the most versed in the difference between the bonds and the letter of credit. I know a lot of the cities do accept the letters of credit. I think the biggest difference from the developer's perspective is, for a letter of credit, he pays a fee, and it might be 3% of the value of the letter of credit. That's his cost. For the bond, I think there's a cost, but it also ties up his assets in that same value from a creditor's perspective. So from a developer's perspective, it's a little different because he's tying up that whatever $250,000 worth of assets with the bond. Brian, I don't know if that's how
Well,
you understand it.
and that's my understanding as well. But I mean, I tend to feel from the city's standpoint that the bond is a little bit more secure than the letter of credit. And I say that just because I've been in situations where we've gotten letters from banks where they have revoked letters of credit.
Brian, let me ask you this question. Are you familiar with an irrevocable letter of credit?
In fact, I want to say I've actually seen irrevocable letters of credit revoked, and that's a concern of mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would lean towards, that is one of those things that we could leave open, at least in my opinion, and let Brian, as the city attorney representative, along with Rick and John, work that out. But unless the commissioners would weigh in otherwise.
I'm good with that too, Jeff. And Rick, can you, or John, somebody, can y'all explain, I might have missed it. Can you explain what the letter of credit is for? It's just to cover, essentially, if it were to go defunct after the phase 1, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. So at the final plating of phase 1, he would put up surety for the construction, remaining construction of Wade Drive.
Yeah, and then it would come, ideally, he would build it as part of phase 2, right?
He will build it as part of phase 2, but as surety for the city, if something were to happen between phase 1 and phase 2, they have that money to
Got it.
build the remainder of the Wade Drive.
And while I don't do bankruptcy law and whatnot, I mean, that letter of credit is, typically my understanding of that is they have to hold up, a certain amount of collateral or whatnot with the bank. But if they were to go belly up, we are just then at that point in a long line of creditors with regards to getting that money. Does that make sense? We may not be the first priority when it comes to distributing proceeds in a insolvency situation.
So let me ask another question, and this might get rid of the whole issue. I mean, is there a way to kind of get 50-50 now and later? I know that we're missing a chunk of right of way. Is there any other way to do that where it would alleviate having to put up anything for the second phase because the construction is so skewed to one phase? If that makes sense.
Joey, I think from the developer's perspective, the hope was to be able to build the portion of Wade Drive that is satisfactory to the city, and then be able to generate some revenue from the sale of homes on phase 1 to come up with the majority of the money for the phase 2 portion of Wade Drive.
Right. And I understand that, John, but at the end of the day, that's his responsibility. It's part of the infrastructure cost for this development. And that's just my opinion, but I do understand your situation as well. I've been on that side of the fence many times.
The other consideration, that staff looked at is the only portion of phase 1 along Wade is the detention pond. So the vast majority of the adjacent property to Wade Drive will be phase 2 construction. So that's kind of why we were amenable to that. But again, that's just for your consideration.
Yeah, I think I'm still leaning towards let's let Brian kind of give the final rule on that when he gets a chance to review the letter. And then he can, I guess they can just report back to us whatever that final agreement is.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think that's the best option moving forward with this plan, Jeff.
And I think that sounds good to us too, Jeff.
All right, thanks, John. Any other questions or comments from any of the other commissioners? If there are not, then I would entertain a motion for the Silverleaf preliminary plat adjacent street improvements, Bush Road and Wade Drive, as presented, with the understanding that the letter of credit / bond will be decided between Brian, Rick, and the developer.
This is Joey. I'll make a motion to approve subdivision 2103, the Silverleaf MOU relating to the off-site improvements in the amounts that we discussed tonight. And that's all contingent upon Brian, John, and the developer figuring out exactly how we want to receive that payment.
This is Tony, I second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is anyone opposed? All right, thank you guys for your work on that.
Thank you, Commission.
All right. All right, now we're going to get into our new business, and we do have several, looks like 5 public hearings this evening. And again, just as a reminder, if you join by phone, there's a *9 you can press. If you join virtually, there's a raise the hand. And we do ask as a courtesy to the folks that want to speak, kind of around a 3-minute time period, to share any thoughts or ask any questions. So with that, our first public hearing this evening is rezone 21-16, Schuber Mitchell Homes, A1 to R3 single family, 162 acres at 11503 Walters Road. And so what we'll do is we'll have the developer give us a brief overview. Then we'll have staff comments, which I believe this is Diane. And then from staff comments, we will open it up to the public. So with that, either Dan or Molly, are you on the phone to give us an overview of your request?
Hi, this is Dan. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for hearing this tonight. We are excited to move forward on this 160-acre parcel and to continue the growth on the north side of Centerton along Walter and to the west of Walters Road. Essentially, this piece will be an extension of the Pines neighborhood, a continuation of the Pines to the north on the west side of Walters, and the Pines is also an R3 neighborhood. I do think it's worth mentioning that we are also talking with the Big Sky neighborhood to the north of us about some common areas that might work for bike trails in the woods, in the ravines on the north end of this property, which we think would be a fun and possibly an asset to the community. We have been talking with the trails community in various forms. And one of the things that's been mentioned is it would be fun to have a place for the mountain bike team at Bentonville West to have a place to practice. So that's kind of one of the thoughts going into this. Can't promise that tonight in the meeting, but that's kind of the idea. One idea we have for some amenities connected to this neighborhood. As always, for Schubert Mitchell Homes, the market really drives home sizes. And so R3 doesn't necessarily mean small homes. It means we get the chance to have a few more homes. We have a great engineering team. And, there's only so much land and highest and best use. So it feels like this fits really well with the R3 just to the south. And of course, our neighbors excited for us to maybe even connect up with them as we head north through this development. So it seems to fit really well with the area. And we are experiencing incredible sales in the Pines. In fact, we wish that it would stop raining. If any of you pray, you could ask God to make this rain stop. It seems to be raining strategically every 3 or 4 days, right, when we need to get back to work. But at the Pines, we've experienced, we have a line of several hundred people who are signed up waiting for home purchases there. So we're excited to create the continuation of that successful neighborhood, as well as being across the street from Orchard Park, which is our first self-developed and built-out neighborhood in Northwest Arkansas. If you've been through Orchard Park lately, you will notice the farmhouse, the Edmiston farmhouse, has had a facelift, and it looks like a pretty cool black and white farmhouse. And we're nearing completion on the remodel of that, and that'll go up for sale relatively soon. With that introduction, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I know Molly with Anderson Engineering would be happy to answer anything that might be a technical question as well. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dan. Diane, do you want to give us a staff overview?
Yes, let's see if I can do this and drive at the same time and not lose my mind. Like Dan said, this property is going to be a continuation here of the Pines, which is right here. And then the Big Sky that he was talking about is this piece of property up here. So the area to the north is zoned R2, which is the medium density single family residential. And then, as he stated, the Pine subdivision here is R3 single family. And let's see if I can do this and not blow anything up. Let me pause real quick. And the transportation for this one, Dan, there are going to be a couple of roads that will have to be considered as part of your project. There is a future major collector that splits east and west and also north and south. And then of course, Walters Road here has been primarily improved. You know, we'll have to see whenever you guys do submit your subdivision plans, you know, what will need to be done with Walters Road and the other future collectors that cut through the property. There does appear to be, the property appears to be outside of any floodplain areas, and the wetland inventory mapper does show possible riverine and freshwater pond and wetlands in the property, kind of in a couple of different areas. So you guys will probably need to have a wetland assessment before you guys do develop the property. Let me see if I can find that map real quick. There it is. Right, there's that one. And as far as the land use plan, this property is considered consistent with the current land use plan because it does show the area as medium high density, no, low to medium density residential, which technically that's what our R3 does allow. Oops. And I think that is what I have at the moment. I do have included in y'all's packets how it is consistent or inconsistent with the land use, with our comprehensive plan implementation. Most of the items it does hit on as being consistent with the comprehensive plan.
All right, thank you, Diane. Before I open it up, any questions or comments from any of the commissioners? If not, I would go ahead and entertain a motion to open up the public hearing for rezone 2116 to Schubert Mitchell Homes from A1 to R3 single family.
This is Amber. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for rezone 21-16 Schubert Mitchell Homes A1 to R3 single family.
This is John. I'll second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is anyone opposed? All right, at this time, we are now open to the public for anyone that wishes to make any comments or ask any questions. Again, there's two ways to join. You can either press the raise the hand, or if you join by phone, you can do *9, and then we can recognize you. Typically, we see the last 3 digits of the phone number, so we'll call on you that way. So with that, I don't know if it's going to be Diane or Nicole, Donna, who's going to let me know who's.
I will be monitoring hands, and at the moment there are none.
Okay. We will go ahead and do a second call then for anyone that wishes to speak on the rezone 2116, the Schubert Mitchell Homes A1 to R3 single family.
There are no hands raised.
And we will do a third and final call for rezone 2116 Schubert Mitchell Homes A1 to R3.
There are no hands raised.
With that, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
This
This
is
is
John. I
Joey. I'll
motion to
make-
close public hearing for rezone 2116 A1 to R3 single family.
This is Joey. I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? All right, let's go through the considerations that we have to go through. The first one is the rezoning consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, including the adopted land use plan? If not, why? And I would lean towards it being consistent with the fact that it is single family homes, which is what the comprehensive plan calls for, and the density seems to match up as well. Does anybody disagree with that or have any comments? All right, is the proposed rezoning compatible with the surrounding area and zones? And I would say that it is. That is one of the growth areas for our community as we continue to see that area grow. So I would say that yes, the single family homes are compatible. Does anybody disagree or have any comments on that? Would all the permitted uses in the new zone be compatible in this location and surrounding areas? And I believe the answer is yes on that one as well. Permitted uses being single family homes. Anybody disagree or have any comments on that? Would the rezoning provide a benefit to one landowner but not be considered for other similar properties in this area? And I do not believe that this provides just one benefit, that we would consider it for other areas or other properties in this area. Does anybody disagree or have any comments? Okay. And there was no public opposition or comments this evening. Any comments or questions from any of the commissioners or staff? If there are not, then I would entertain a motion for rezone 2116 the Schubert Mitchell Homes, A1 to R3 single family against 162 acres at 11503 Walters Road.
This is John. I'll motion to approve rezone 2116 Schubert Mitchell Homes, A1 to R3 single family.
This is Joey. I'll second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Todd, if you'll do a roll call for me.
Tony Davis,
Yes.
Jerry Harris,
Yes.
Amber Beal.
Yes.
Still got a mower back there, Amber.
Oh yeah, fun times over here.
Joey Engel,
Yes.
Ben Lewis,
Yes.
John Sessoms,
Yes.
Devin Murphy,
Yes.
Craig Langford,
Yes.
and Jeff Seifarth.
And Jeff's a yes as well. Thanks, Dan. Good luck.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Next on the agenda this evening is also a public hearing. This is rezone 2117 RLP Developments, A1 to R3 single family, 11.3 acres at 2885 Edgewood. Is the applicant here to give us an overview? That may be Patrick as well, right, Diane?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Yes, that's correct. It's Patrick.
All right, Patrick, give us a brief overview.
Sure. There's about a 5-acre tract of land on the south side of Edgewood, generally east of Tycoon, west of Wade. We're just looking to rezone A1 to R3 and looking to do approximately a 30, I think our concept showed about a 30 lot subdivision in here. That's a brief overview for you.
Patrick, is it 5 acres or 11 acres?
I'm sorry, you're right. It's 11 acres. Sorry. I'm working on a few things and got to keep them straight.
Thanks, sir. Diane, I believe this is you as well. You want to give us a staff overview?
Yes, it is me again. This property is on the south side of Edgewood Drive. We currently have the Silverleaf subdivision that you were discussing, the Wade Road project. That is this subdivision right here. This is the Prairie Brook, trying to keep all the names of everything straight, and Edgewood subdivision, and all of these are R3 single family, and all of them are either under construction, preliminary approved, and not quite approved yet. So just kind of to give you an overview of what's all going on in this area. The property over here to the east is R2. This is the Tamaron subdivision. And then of course we have A1 and of course the city of Bentonville down here to the southeast. Edgewood is currently just a gravel road. So that is something that will have to be improved when they do have their plans brought in. And Edgewood is just a local road. So that, is just going to be, 50-foot right of way for that particular piece of property. And as far as the surrounding zonings, you can see that it matches up with everything that's been occurring there to the north. There does not seem to be any wetlands or floodplain or anything on this particular piece of property. There is a pond over here, but it looks to be just outside of their property, I believe, if I can, had everything drawn incorrectly. And so it is compatible with the current zoning. And as far as the land use, this entire area is low to medium density residential, as the same as what was on the property we just looked at. And again, our current R3 does fit within this low to medium density residential. So it is considered consistent with this project. And there are several things in the comprehensive plan implementation that it does meet. That there are a couple things that it might not be consistent to. It may be consistent with creating, of course, more homes and hopefully some affordable homes for the area. And let's see. And it's technically not adjacent to current housing developments yet, but as you see, they are migrating that direction already because we do have, like I said, plans for this property north of Edgewood. So staff does believe that it is consistent with the land use plan, and it is compatible with adjacent zoning. And that's all that I have.
All right, thank you, Diane. Any questions or comments from any of the commissioners before we open it up to the public? All right, I would entertain a motion then to open the rezone 2117 RLP developments. And it's A1 to R3 single family, 11.3 acres at 2885 Edgewood.
This is Craig. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for rezone 21-17.
This is Joey. I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? All right, we are now open to the public. Again, anyone that wishes to speak that joined virtually can press the raise the hand, or if you join by phone, you can do *9. And so with that, Nicole, is there anyone that wishes to speak?
There are currently no hands raised.
We will do a second call for anyone that wishes to speak for rezone 2117.
No hands are raised.
And we will do a third and final call for anyone that wishes to speak on rezone 2117 RLP developments.
And there are no hands raised.
With that, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
This is Amber. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for rezone 21-17 RLP development.
This is Jerry, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? All right, let's go through our 5 considerations. The first one is the rezoning consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, including the adopted land use plan, if not why. And I believe that it is consistent with the plan being the single family residential. Does anybody disagree or have any comments? Second question, is the proposed rezoning compatible with the surrounding area and zones? And I believe, as is pointed out, there continues to be additional residential out in that area. So I do believe that it is. Does anybody disagree or have any questions or comments on that? Third one, would all the permitted uses in the new zone be compatible in this location and surrounding areas? And I believe the answer is yes here, and the fact that it would be single-family homes. Anybody disagree with that or have any questions? The fourth one, would the rezoning provide a benefit to one landowner but not be considered for other similar properties in this area? And I do not believe that it would benefit just one landowner. Anybody disagree with that or have any comments? And we heard no public opposition. Any other questions or comments from any of the commissioners or staff? If there are not, then I would entertain a motion for rezone 2117 RLP developments, A1 to R3 single family. Again, it's just over 11.3 acres, 2885 Edgewood.
This is John. I'll motion to approve rezone 2117 RAP developments from A1 to R3 single family.
This is Joey. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Todd, if you'll do a roll call for me.
Tony Davis,
Yes.
Jerry Harris,
Yes.
Amber Beal,
Yes.
Joey Engel,
Yes.
Ben Lewis,
Yes.
John Sessoms,
Yes.
Devin Murphy,
Yes.
Craig Langford,
Yes.
and Jeff Seifert.
And I'm a yes as well. Thanks, Patrick. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda this evening is also a public hearing. This is rezone 2118, the Callis property from A1 to C2 and R1, just over 5 acres at 2525 West Centerton Boulevard. And Donna, is Chris with us to give us an overview, or are you going to cover it this evening?
Marcy Platts is on.
Okay.
Hi there, this is Marcy Platts.
Hey there, just a quick overview, Marcy.
Yes, so this is a project that we submitted for a tract split. The homeowner was moving from his house somewhere else and was selling off just the home property. But because the current property was zoned A1, it did not allow for tract splits, of course, under 10 acres. And therefore the rezoning was instigated, and they will currently be rezoning the bottom property that has the residence from A1 to R1, and then the top 2.03 acres from A1 to C2.
Okay, thanks, Marcy. Donna, do you want to give us a staff overview?
Sure. So Marcy covered the tract split numbers pretty well. So the property is located along Centerton Boulevard. This is pretty far out to the west. It is located by 279. The master street plan for the city does show a proposed major arterial going along the west side of the property. So that is a potential extension that the city will be doing somewhere down the line. The tract split does show proposed right of way, but is not proposing to actually dedicate the right of way at this time. So the neighborhood commercial is the, highway commercial is the proposed rezone to commercial, which would be adjacent to Centerton Boulevard. There is existing highway commercial both to the east and to the west. And the otherwise there is agriculture surrounding the property. Then there is Benton County to the west and the north. There is an existing heavy industrial lot about 2.2 miles to the east on the south side of West Centerton Boulevard, which is APAC Central, and then a light industrial, which is AMP Electrical, and a storage, which is the C2 lot further to the east. The requested zoning to highway commercial may be considered compatible given the parcel's location at a major arterial and proximity to the existing industrial and highway commercial zoning. The requested zoning to R1, which is low density residential, could also be considered compatible considering the adjacent proximity to low residential housing to the south and the agricultural uses in the area. However, the commission should also consider the adjacency to the Centerton Boulevard and the proposed extension of the highway. For the land use plan, this entire area is designated as commercial, as you can see on the right side. Specifically, this is the designated as a central Highway 279 commercial corridor for the comprehensive plan, which is described as having the opportunity to serve as Centerton's regional commercial hub. With deeper lots that can accommodate big box development, this portion of the corridor has the capacity to accommodate a significant amount of commercial development. Commuters from Hiwassee, Gravette, Decatur, Hyphal, and the rest of Northwest Arkansas region have direct access via its namesake, Highway 279 and Highway 102. Business park and denser mixed residential development are recommended adjacent to the character area to create a multifaceted and multifunctional regional hub for the city. Mixed-use development should also be considered compatible in this area. So the requested rezoning to highway commercial may be considered consistent with the adopted land use plan as it is commercial, and the requested zoning to low density residential is not considered consistent with the land use plan as it is a residential use and not a commercial use. So we do have a number of items on the comprehensive plan relating to the development of this as a commercial area. So it does not meet the intent for the comprehensive plan to be a commercial area for residential, but it does meet for the commercial rezoning. If there are any questions, please let me know.
All right, thank you, Donna. Any questions or comments before we open it up to the public? If not, I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
This is John. I motion to open a public hearing.
That's Jerry. I'll second.
All right, I got a motion, a couple seconds to open the public hearing. So we're now open to the public. Again, there's a couple ways to be recognized. First is to raise your hand if you're virtual, and *9 if you happen to join by phone. Nicole, is there anyone that wishes to speak in regards to rezone 2118?
There are currently not any hands raised.
We'll do a second call for anyone that wishes to speak in regards to rezone 2118.
There are no hands raised.
And we will do a third and final call for anyone that wishes to speak in regards to rezone 2118.
There are no hands raised.
With that, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
This is Jerry. I make a motion to close public hearing on RZ 21-18.
This is Ben. I'll second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. Let's go to our questions. Is the rezoning consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan, including the adopted land use plan? If not, why? Gosh, I'm on the fence on this one. And so I completely agree that the commercial is consistent. The large area is definitely designed for the future when we think about the land use plan, with the understanding of, 279 and some others. So understand why it was, designated that way on the land use plan. But I also have to consider, and we should consider, why we're here this evening. The fact is someone moved, there's a house that exists today. I believe they're trying to do the right thing by, the front, but then also leaving the house that's there. Understanding that, that house could, potentially be, I'll call it used for business in the future. So I'm definitely on the fence on this one. It would certainly entertain any comments from any of the other commissioners.
Jeff, I have a question. If we did favor this right here, with that, I think that would cause issues for future development in the commercial zoning, because you'll have a residential potentially abutting heavy highway commercial to the east and the west would be my concern.
Yeah, and again, I don't disagree. And if this house didn't exist, then I don't think we would have this conversation. I think that's part of the reason that we're, even having this conversation this evening. But I think that one parcel, with the discussion this evening, that, the understanding is we really want that area to be commercial. I think that, helps us in the future. Don't disagree, Tony, but, I also understand that there's a house that exists there today.
Jeff, looking at it, I think we're going to run into kind of that same situation on Main Street that we said no to last meeting, when they went from R3 and into R3 and into mixed use, when there's existing parcels in an area where we want to make commercial. We're going to have to make some of those exceptions, because you can't just tell people you can't live here anymore. But at the same time, the plan does call for all of that to be commercial. And to Tony's point, how do you have a home in the middle of all that? It's heavily commercialized all around it. Does the new owner know that the plan is to be heavily commercial all around it? I don't know.
And I don't know the answer to that. And I know we hear it all the time that they didn't know what was going to be there. So, again, I don't want to say that's not our responsibility. That's for the reason we provide this, to the public. So.
And my only concern, I guess, I'm not really a concern, but caution is to set precedents, right? If we allow for that R1 there, then what's to say the next parcel next to it can't say, well, you allow for R1 there, why can't I have R2? And then shortly you start to go down that road where we just talked about a couple weeks ago with diminishing your commercial space. So, but that gets into the point of, would we allow this consideration for someone else? That question later on. Right?
Yep. Okay.
The other thing for your all's consideration is that the city does have non-conforming code. So any existing use that was in existence prior to a rezoning is grandfathered in, so that use is allowed to continue until it is discontinued or changed. If the use changes, then they'd have to comply with the zoning district. So that might give you all some food for thought as well.
Okay. And I was about to ask, because I thought that was the case. So in that instance, it still could be split into two parcels, but the house would then be non-conforming until it changes, correct?
That's correct. In this case, because they are splitting the land, and because it is currently A1, it does need to be rezoned in order for the lot split to be creating conforming lots. So that's kind of one side of it. The other side is that the existing use can continue as a non-conforming legal use in a district, for instance, if it was zoned commercial, it would be a non-conforming legal use in that zone, as long as that residential use did not change.
And would
There's
that
oh, go ahead.
still apply with it currently being agriculture? You know, the lot split with it being agriculture, would that just be non-conforming agriculture currently then?
I don't know that I'm totally following. Will you try to ask that again?
Say like if this rezone were denied, because currently it's all agriculture. So if it remained, it would just be a non-conforming use in the agriculture.
But we wouldn't be able to approve the track split because the track split is not allowed. We're not allowed to make non-conforming lots with a track split. So the zoning has to change in order for the track split to go forward. The question is, what is that zone? And if you all are leaning towards not wanting to go residential because there's an existing house, we do have code that allows for that residential use. And there are a lot of parameters around that. Like if there's damage in excess of 50%, if the use is discontinued, things like that, then it has to conform. But and I don't know, Marcy, if you can talk for the owner, or if the owner is here to kind of weigh in on their considerations, if they would want to revise their request to all commercial. Maybe they want the commission to make a decision. I'm not sure, but I wanted to give that information to the commission as well.
This is Jerry. The question I had, if it was all zoned commercial, and the how could the people still live in the house until something changed later on future in the non-conforming basis?
Yes.
Right.
I think also understanding, Jerry, the parameters that I'll call are in place, like Nicole mentioned. If, for whatever reason there was to be some damage that's greater than, let's say, 50%, then it could not be rebuilt as a residential house.
And I've
Yeah,
seen
as
it a
far as
lot
the
where even
homeowners,
future uses of the house, even when the current homeowner moves out, it could still be a house. It's it's a business used house. I mean, we see that all the time.
right, as far as the homeowner, as far as I've been told, the homeowner is already constructing a new home to live in and was just wanting to list and sell this property as obviously a residence.
Do you understand the conversation that we had around the non-conforming?
I do understand, yes, that it would still be able to be a resident, but you would also zone it as commercial.
Yes.
And Brian, would we need the owner to specifically, or their proxy specifically make that request, since their current request is for both commercial and residential? If that were the
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that something that would need to be re-requested through like paperwork applications or just verbally?
We can
I
actually.
mean, are they wanting to do it tonight?
They are not on this call with me, unfortunately. So I can't answer that, but I just know their original intent. So yeah, you just tell me how.
Yeah. My position would have been that we could have maybe have done it had they been on, but because they are not, yeah, we're gonna have to have another meeting on it. Let's talk about that one tomorrow too, when I have the opportunity of looking at it. I'm not certain. I hate to have to see them go through everything, but that might be the case. But I think we can talk about that tomorrow if it doesn't get through.
Could the commission potentially table the request? Yeah, I guess, is your concern that the change is going from R1 to C2, which would be a more intensive request, so they might have to re-notify?
Well, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, anytime that we're doing anything that's more dense, or really any type of change, I mean, we have to deal with notification.
And I know the one question I'll be asked is what would that delay this project? When would be the approval time for that?
It would just be the amount of time for notifications, and then it would just, be on the next meeting in order to meet those notifications.
Okay.
Next, public hearing notice deadline that we can meet would be for the June 15th meeting. So it would be a month if the notification has to be redone.
Okay.
And so we can follow back up with you well, let me back up, Marcy. We're going to go through our continued questions here so that you have some guidance and at least the conversation to share with the homeowners. At that point, if you feel and we feel as though it may not pass, then we would give you the opportunity to request us to table it this evening. If we table it this evening, then there would be two things. One would be a follow-up tomorrow between Brian, that's who was speaking earlier, our legal counsel, and staff to determine if there needs to be republication. If there needs to be republication, then the first meeting would be June 15th. If the decision is made, there would not be anything to be, any notifications to be sent, then we could have it on the next meeting.
Okay. I understand.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and finish our questions and at least allow you to hear any additional comments. I think the comments are going to be very consistent in regards to the fact that, it does leave that one parcel, also understanding why we're there, but it does, kind of leave an outlier. So let me go ahead and finish our questions, and then I'll come back to you in regards to to your request, if there's any, okay?
That sounds great.
Okay, thank you. All right, so any other comments or feedback on the first question, the rezoning being consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan?
This is Jerry. I don't think it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, especially I'm talking about the residential area there.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. All right, let's go on to the next question. The next question is the proposed rezoning compatible with the surrounding area and zones. And according to the map, there's definitely industrial out there. There's commercial out there. Of course, we have the Highway 279 with the proposed as well, future. So I would say definitely the commercial is compatible, but again, the residential would not be. Does anybody have any comments or questions in regards to that? Will all the permitted uses in the new zone be compatible in this location and surrounding area? And again, I think the commercial leans itself towards the compatibility. It gets into that residential that if this entire area were to develop as commercial with the infrastructure surrounding it, then I do not believe that it would be. Does anybody have any questions or comments in regards to that? Would the rezone provide a benefit to one landowner but not be considered for other similar properties in this area? And John, I think this is what you're alluding to in this case, and I think we've been consistent over the last couple of meetings that if we would allow that residential, it would be, considered a benefit to just this one landowner, and things that we would not necessarily consider, as well. And then the last and final question, there was no public.
Hey Jeff, I got a comment on the one we just went over. I almost feel like knowing that the house is getting constructed, I almost feel like that would provide a benefit as well.
Well, the house is being constructed somewhere else.
On the R1
Yeah,
line, right?
yeah, Joy, the way I understand it,
Sorry.
the current owner is rebuilding a house somewhere else and wants to sell this property that's already there.
That is correct.
Okay, then I totally misunderstood.
Sorry.
Then what's the rationale for not just doing it all commercial?
They want to sell that house, right? As a
Correct.
Jordan.
They're selling the house as a home to another family to live.
Got it.
Which is the reason we went down the road of the non-conforming use, Joey.
And this is Lorraine. I'm
I
just
saw
going
your
to
hand. I was getting ready to call on you.
Okay, I just wanted to interject. When we have had these situations before where there is residential with future commercial or another district, we would zone it to make it conforming with that zone if they were not intending to develop at that time. That's better than having a non-conforming use out there. It will still not be in compliance with the land use plan, but it will be in compliance with the zoning district that it is assigned to. And that, I feel that's better than if you zone it as commercial at this time. I mean, they could still sell it for residential, but it does have that label as zoning. And also they would have to go through the entire process. You could do the commercial part and leave that A1, or they would have to come back and do the commercial rezone, and because it is a higher use than what they're requesting for the residential.
So Lorene, what exactly is your recommendation?
Because that is a residential structure, it's being used as residential. I would say, and it's not going to be used for commercial at this time. I think that it needs to be an R1, and then that way we know to buffer at this time around it. And then at such time as that chooses to develop, then we would rezone it.
I don't know that that's really fair to the other commercial properties that are going to go in there.
And that was my, Jeff, that was where I was leaning at. Not necessarily a benefit to the current owner, but the landowners right now that own all the proposed commercial space around it. Now we're telling them, you can't have, a residential, but we're allowing this to be residential. That's what I meant.
But it's currently being used as residential. You're just continuing that use.
But I think
I guess I would say like downtown Bimco is zoned I1, but it's really in a C1 district.
But I think the concern here, Lorraine, and we've had this discussion in our last couple of meetings, is that there's a large land use plan out there in this area for commercial. And if we allow one parcel, let's say, to become residential, and then other people along the area, let's say 279, want to do the same thing, then it doesn't match up with the land use plan being commercial in that area and development around, this infrastructure, I'll call it 279 and 102. And so the continued questions that we have, in regards to some of these is, gosh, it's not consistent. And we want to be as consistent as we can, with the land use plan. And if I heard the commissioners and in this case, there's this smaller, parcel that all of a sudden is just going to be sitting there as a resident, zone that way as well. Whenever we would have had the opportunity to bring it in as commercial, if you will, during the split, understanding that it could still be, lived in as a resident. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, I know what you're saying, but there are properties all over that you could rezone according to the land use, but that is not what their current use is. It's the future land use. If there wasn't a home on that and it wasn't currently being used as a residential, then yes. But there is a home on there, on that property. That's my opinion, but
they can still live in it. Is non-conforming, correct?
yes, they used to continue as long as that home was being used for residential.
Okay. And I know we've had a few of those over the years where, they've continued as their use until, something changed, if that's what we want to say.
Jeff, I tend to lean in agreement with you on this. If we're going to go that route, I lean that way. But I'm almost of the opinion that it's either all A1 or all C3.
I was leaning that way as well, Joy. It was. I would lean toward approving the non-conforming, until such time as things change, but just completely rezoning that R1. That's not saying that we can't tear the house down and build a new one every 2 years forever, right? It's going to always be R1. You can't ever get that commercial back ever. Yeah.
This is Jerry. The way I see this proposal, this request is I believe that is R1 is solely for the purpose of the landowner selling that piece of property to someone else. And for me, then that would, in my opinion, the rezoning would provide a benefit for one landowner and not be considered for similar properties around the area.
Yeah, don't disagree, Jerry. The only caveat to that is the fact that even if they, it was to be commercial, they are still going to be able to sell it. Now, it may change it just a little bit, because knowing the future, but the fact is, non-conforming, it could still be, lived in as a resident. So it's kind of a catch-22 in some cases, but I definitely, see what you're saying.
We have Mayor Bill with his hand raised. Jeff, if you would like to entertain his comments.
Mayor Bill.
Unmute. Am I unmuted?
Yes, sir.
Great. Hey, another thing I'm thinking, just listen to Lorraine's comments, and this is a thought. Because they're trying to split this and sell part of the property. Maybe the commission should just, just rezone the C2 to 2 acres, leave the 3 at A1 for now until such time that they want to do something with it, then come back to the commission and request. Just a thought.
Lorraine, what are your thoughts? Because the whole impetus for this rezone is that they proposed a tract split, and the tract split made non-conforming A1 lots because they were less than 10 acres. So they have to rezone in order for us to approve the tract split. Is that correct? Is my reasoning correct there?
Well, I mean, they could be, how many acres are left on the house?
3 acres.
Okay. I mean, you can leave them A1 and it's non-conforming. On others, we've just taken the lowest
and we would be good with that,
or the highest use that it is being used for. We have some tracts of land that are zoned for what they're being used for, or they could, if they wished, to zone it. And I'm just looking at like instead of an R1, they go ahead and zone it R3 single family in case later on they want to subdivide.
Looks like Rick had.
Lorraine, I'm not sure that well, I know I don't support the any other type of single family zone, any sort of residential zoning here. And I think there are a few others that agreed with that.
But I think Lorraine was suggesting that it could possibly stay A1 and not be rezoned just in the rear, and that the front property would get rezoned to commercial.
Yeah, it's actually worse for us to do that instead of a residential, because when we look at what we have out there, we look at that's what the use of those properties are. Our zoning map does not match our land use map.
And doesn't our subdivision code require, or maybe it's the tract split application requires that the lots conform with zoning districts, and that we are not going to approve a tract split that makes non-conforming lots, I guess is my question.
So if that's the case, then we couldn't leave it at A1 because it's not 5 acres. Is that correct?
And it sounds like that tract split would then create the non-conforming lot too.
The track split would create a non-conforming lot, yes.
I think the bigger question, Donna, was, I don't think that our code allows for that. Is that correct?
I don't have the code in front of me at the moment, so I'm not certain.
I know there's reference to it on the tract split application. I'm
Yeah,
going through
I
our
don't-
subdivision code to see if I can find it in the code itself. I'm sorry, go ahead, Lorraine.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know that it specifically states that a tract split cannot. It does talk about agriculture, an agricultural lot, that it can be reduced to 5 acres. But
There actually is, under the corrective lot split, should not produce a new lot and should not result in any lot having a land area less than the zoning requirement inside the city. And then the divisional lot split refers to the corrective lot split process.
I just sat through all 4 of the training sessions this last week. I think Juliet addressed this in part of hers. We're causing a hardship to these people in 2 things. We're not allowing them to maintain something that they originally had. And in your own words earlier, if this is damaged for any reason after this split, under the non-conforming or anything else, if it's 51%, they can't rebuild it or fix that. So who's going to offset this cost to these people if it gets lost in a situation like that?
Well, Rick, then the answer to that's to leave it in ag
Yeah, I mean,
in one lot. And I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I concur. I mean, there's no need to rezone at all. I mean, if they want to keep the house, they can keep the house as is. There's no need for them to try to do a lot split to turn half of it commercial.
I agree, Tony.
The owner is wanting to sell off the 2 separate tracts, so.
No, I understand that, but it can't meet the zoning code is the problem.
well, I think Juliet, the way she explained it, you could, because this is creating an unusual circumstance.
So Rick, to that point, you're saying I could, if I had this land, I could keep it ag in the back and I could rezone a portion of the front that was commercial that was under the minimum lot requirement?
Well, that and again, that's part of our privilege in looking at this as non-conforming, and we can improve it by that being non-conforming. And that's what I understood out of all this training that I sat 6 hours going through it, to be honest with you, but I hope so.
And my opinion is that you zone it to the type of use, because if you leave it as ag, it's you don't have the same allowable uses as what's compatible with this residential R1, but there's 3 acres. Now, see, they could be RE. Why did they not go RE, which is kind of agricultural? And
I think we just went in the direction that we were given or suggested. But if RE is a better one, Lorraine, then that's,
well, if they have 3 acres and they would want a horse or something, animal, then the RE is more compatible for that area right there.
I think that's a good idea.
And it's not unusual to have a 3-acre area, while a commercial area is developing. I mean, okay, for
Again,
example, the dog,
yeah,
Kim
I'm still the
Norton's
same
place.
opinion. I'm sorry. I'm still the same opinion. They can live there, sell that whole thing as A1 with a house on it. They're trying to benefit by splitting a lot to make half of it commercial, and
That's right.
that's something I can't approve or currently.
I agree.
I don't think we would let the current owners of the land around it do the same thing, is what I'm saying.
Tony, I agree. And I think in Rick's situation, I don't know the specifics of the conversation he was talking about in the training, but I think the difference might be that this is a self-imposed hardship that they're putting themselves in. It's not an existing condition with the size of the lot. They're trying to split it.
I agree, Joey.
I don't know. I feel we're putting people in a hardship. They could sell off half of it, maintain part of it. We could have business in the front. They could still have a residence in the back, whether they sell it or not. It's still starting the process to what we want, commercial in the front. Eventually that back will probably go commercial, but it doesn't have to go all at once. Why do we have to say, if you own 500 acres and we're saying it's commercial, you have to sell that whole 500 acres at once?
Hey, Rick, let me throw something else out there for you. If we have this as residential and commercial develops around it, now those commercial lots are subject to additional screening requirements. That might not be fair in this situation.
But it is correct in saying that the homeowner is only selling the house property. They are planning on maintaining and continuing to own the front part. They're not wanting to sell all of their land.
Yeah, but Marcy, and I'm just going to throw this out there, guys. I mean, the bigger picture, is that I was sitting here thinking about it. If we were to allow it to go residential, whether it's R1, R2, R3, or any of the residential, they could do whatever they want, and it's 3 acres. And I think Joey just kind of hit the nail on the head. All of a sudden, instead of one house, there's 6 houses. And we have everything else is commercial. And the reason it's commercial is because of the infrastructure that's out there. And I think it's some of the previous conversations that we've had around the fact that, once we give it up, we're not going to get it back. And we've got 279 out there. We have 102 out there, and we have a proposed, road, beside this. And so I think those are things, as we truly think about, our responsibility to adhere to the land use plan. I think that's something that we need to keep in mind as we think about, this particular, not just this one, but other, piece of property as well.
So Jeff, would you agree with this? Would you agree that zoning it all to commercial could be a compromise?
It would be a compromise to me, yes. And then it would be non-conforming.
Yep.
And we know that they're not going to build 6 other houses on the property, which they would potentially be able to do if we had zoned it as R1 in this case. I think our biggest, then our biggest issue becomes the fact that it is more intense than the R1. And that is something that we cannot consider this evening since it's a more intense use versus what was actually published.
And Marcy, if that's something that you guys want to come back with, just please make sure that the applicant understands the ramifications of that.
Turn on mute. There we go. Okay.
That would be essentially if something happened to that house, it would be non-conforming, and I think there's a percentage, Rick said 50%, it would be unable to be remodeled and fixed up.
I would like to just hear, I'm trying to keep count of potential yeses and nos here. Ben, Devin, Amber, you guys want to weigh in on anything?
I kind of agree with what you're saying. It's just you don't want to create a further hardship, but again, we don't want to have something to come back down the road, like you're saying, with somebody willed it to somebody, or then it's then that road we're going to split it again and build 2 or 3 houses, and so I agree.
Jeff, this is Craig. I'm kind of stuck on what Lorene said about the RE. Can they do any sort of development beyond one house in that? Like, how many could they do in that? Are we protected to where they couldn't really develop that? It's just the one house, or I'm not real familiar with the RE.
I don't know the answer to that because I don't think we've ever done any residential estates. What's the, Nicole or Lorraine, do you guys have that in front of you?
Yeah, the RE minimum lot area requirement is 2.5, I believe 2.5 acres. So they would only be able to accommodate one residential use on that 3-acre piece. It would not be able to be split any further. And it is kind of designed to be a light ag. It kind of allows for some hobby farm type uses. I'm trying to get to the district. Lorene, do you have any other things to add about RE?
No, I think you're hitting it.
I think the 2.5 acres was the kind of answer Craig's question.
Okay.
And I know the homeowner would be fine with RE. We just went with what we thought we were supposed to, but RE would be a fine zoning.
Okay.
Now I will say, Jeff, after hearing that, Christy's mom's place in Conway was almost this exact same thing. It was an old home place, and part of it was commercial, and they were zoned. I don't know if they called it RE, but there was the requirement, whatever it was like RE. There was no way you could subdivide it because the piece that when they split it off was exactly to qualify to put it into that, and it never could have another house built on it because the lot requirement was would never hit that size again. But it's been that way for, I don't know, 20 something years, and they just sold it and they kept it RE. But if the house, anything ever happened to the house, it had to go to commercial, conforming with the rest of the property. So I don't know how it was all written up, but I know the house could never have another house built on that due to the size of the lot would never conform with anything else as far as that zoning. But that's, as they were reading that, I just remembered that's the way that one was in Conway.
Yeah, and I think the problem here is this one would always be conforming if it's only needs 2.5 acres.
Hey, Jeff, I think 2 things stick out here. Number 1 is the precedent that you set by rezoning it to that. And then number 2, you'll never get it back to commercial. So those are 2 things that stick out. And I like the option of all commercial.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
That's where I'm at. That's Jerry.
Okay.
So Jeff, this is Craig to kind of answer your specific question. Like as it stands, I'm not in favor of it.
Okay.
Jeff, are we asking for a table or are we asking for a decision?
That's where I was trying to go.
Okay,
John.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was not. We were
To be
still.
honest,
split, and it could
I'm
have
not
gone.
sure. Sorry, Jeff. I was gonna say, I'm not sure it matters because if it gets denied, they could come back with a, it would be substantially different. I think that's the qualification to rehear it. But I'll leave that up to Brian, I guess.
Well, and the more I'm thinking about it, I think that if it does get denied, I mean, or if we're substantially changing it to the R3, I mean, I think we've got to get notice out. Again, even though it would not be as dense, it is a different request than what has been provided to the surrounding neighbors.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Lorraine and Nicole, I just want to make sure this is not one of those, and I think this is kind of what Joey's question. Because I know there's some things, if we deny them, they're not allowed to come back for a year. This wouldn't be one of those situations, would it?
Lorraine, you're welcome to chime in, but my understanding is that the same request cannot be asked
Okay.
within a year.
Okay.
Is that right, Lorraine?
That's the way that we have interpreted that, but others do interpret it differently. It is something that does need to be clarified in the zoning code quickly. But that's the way that it has always been applied.
Meaning the year or the substantial change?
Yes. Yes, but okay, for them to come back and request a higher use, you would have to table this or for them to come back and amend their request. Because you're wanting them to come back for a commercial, and that's much higher than the residential. If you deny that right now.
Okay, so if we deny.
Well, now there is also the part where two members can bring it back to the commission.
If we table it?
Even if it's denied. Nicole, do you have that up? I'm so limited on it.
Sounds like it's just easier to table it.
I agree.
Before we table it, I just want to make sure there are no further questions or comments that either the commissioners, the staff, or Marcy have before we do that.
I would like to clarify one thing, probably Brian or Lorraine, since the track split has been ratified for administrative approval, and the track split to make conforming lots needs a rezone, and this gets tabled, I assume that means we cannot record the track split until this gets resolved. Is that correct?
That would be my position.
Yes, yes.
Do we need to unratify the administrative approvals?
It would not hurt.
So John, I think we'll do that under other business.
Okay, and really, I'm trying to look into this on grandfathered legal non-conforming uses in commercial areas. This was Okay, I guess in our code, if that property was completely destroyed, I thought the use had to, is it just the structure or the use of the property? This is, each city is different, so we would have to look at our code, but if a recently appraised property was a single family residence, but it was located in a commercial zoning district, this city stated that the grandfathered use would be continued even if the home was completely destroyed. So we do need to look at that in our code.
So I definitely think there are some further research that needs to be done, I think, and provided to us as well as Marcy.
Yes.
Okay. There are no other comments or questions. Then I would entertain a motion to table rezone 2118, the Callis property A1 to C2 and R1.
This is Joey. I'll make a motion to table rezone 2118, Callis property rezone A1 to C2 and A1 to R1.
Devin, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to table. Is there anyone that is opposed to tabling? Okay, thank you guys. Good discussion. Marcy, please continue to work with Donna and the staff. And we will see you at one of the future meetings, okay?
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, next on the agenda this evening is also a public hearing, and this is for conditional use 2103. This is for Buttercup, Cupcake Food Vendor, and Haley Plaza, Lot A of the Southland Edition at 110 Haley Drive. It is C2, and it's 0.77 acres. Donna, is Samantha on just to give us a quick overview?
I do not see her.
Okay. Do you want to give us a quick overview then of what they're asking?
Sure, just a second. So this request is for a mobile food vendor. It is in an existing commercial center parking lot on Haley Drive, which is right off of East Centerton Boulevard. So as this is a temporary use, it does require a conditional use permit. The request is for 3 years. So the request is to rent just a single space. The food truck is entirely self-contained, so the cupcake truck will not require any utility connections. It is only at this time requested for one Saturday a month from about 12 to 5. There's not going to be any additional employees except for Samantha. Parking is available in the adjacent parking lot. If there's going to be any signage, that would be required to get signage through sign permits. No outdoor structural changes are being proposed. It's essentially just a food truck that'll be parked in the parking lot.
So no outdoor seating or tables or anything?
None were requested.
Okay. And then I saw that it was self-contained. Okay. Any questions or comments from any of the commissioners before we open it up to the public? If not, I would entertain a motion to open a public hearing for conditional use 2103, the Buttercup food vendor.
This is Amber. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for conditional use 21-03.
This is Joey.
I'll second.
Motion in a couple seconds. Is anyone opposed? All right, we're now open for any public comments or questions. Again, if you join virtually, you can raise your hand. If you joined by phone, you can press *9 and be recognized. Nicole, is there anyone that wishes to speak?
No hands raised.
We'll do a second call for anyone that wishes to speak on the conditional use.
There are no hands raised.
And we'll do a third and final call for anyone from the public that wishes to speak.
There are no hands raised.
With that, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
This is Ben. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
It's John. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? All right. Any questions or comments in regards to the conditional use? Again, I think everything was fairly spelled out. They are asking for 3 years. In regards to that, I think everything else is covered. If there's no questions or comments, then I would entertain a motion for the conditional use for the Buttercup Cupcake Food Vendor.
All of the conditional uses, you've seen them pretty well before. They're pretty typical of mobile food vendors. So there's nothing particularly of note in what we have.
Just want to confirm should be no parking issues, right?
They're in an existing commercial parking lot, so
Yeah, I see. Yeah, it looks like there's plenty. And one more question, Jeff. The request was just for the 1 day. Is that what this conditional use is going to approve? It's 1 Saturday per month.
we don't have a condition in here that limits the amount of time they can do. That's just what the request was for.
So we'll be approving it to be permanent use every day, right? Even if their intent is to only use it 1 day.
We can add a condition that sets limits on times and hours if you would like, but there's not currently a condition that sets it to 1 Saturday per month.
Yeah, I was just asking. I didn't want to limit it if they wanted to do more. I would say it would only be a concern if there were parking issues and items like that, but I don't know. I don't know that I have an issue with approving it like a typical conditional use, but with the caveat that just like everything else, it's subject to review of the actual use. And if there becomes a problem, we can, discuss how to resolve that.
Which the condition does, the language does allow for that.
Right. Okay. Man, if nobody's got anything else, I'll make a motion to approve conditional use 2103 Buttercup Mobile Food Vendor.
This is John. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Todd, if you're still with us, if you'll do a roll call for me.
I am. Tony Davis,
Yes.
Jerry Harris,
Yes.
Amber Beal,
Yes.
Joey Engel,
Yes.
Ben Lewis,
Yes.
John Sessoms,
Yes.
Devin Murphy,
Yes.
Craig Langford,
Yes.
and Jeff Seifarth.
Yes. All right. Next on the agenda this evening is our last public hearing. This is for conditional use 2105 Ice It Down Ice Vending Machine, 391 North Main Street. It is C1 and it's 0.89 acres. And Nicole, I think this is you. Are you going to present, or is Landon on the phone to give us an overview?
Landon is here.
Can you hear me? My name's Landon.
Yes, sir. Give us just a brief overview.
Absolutely. So this is a mobilized vending machine. You might have seen these around Northwest Arkansas. The structure itself is not permanent in nature. It is 8 feet wide by 24 feet long. It's the size of 2 parking spaces. And the proposal would be to place this structure with gravel parking. Obviously, there are 2 places that are going to need a new whistle, if you will, from the for the drainage, because both of the ones that are there are not sufficient, and that would be replaced. The existing structure that is there is an older shed of sorts and trees that is to be removed, taken down, and taken away. And this ice house vending machine is to be placed a little farther back, given the setbacks, than where that building is currently, to accommodate enough parking, ease of use, and no congestion there on that piece of property.
All right, thanks, Landon. I have some questions here in the future, but let's go ahead and let Nicole give us an overview from a staff perspective.
Okay, so this property is 0.89 acres off of North Main, just south of 2nd Street and the Centerton Cemetery. It is currently zoned C1, Central Business District, and the use in front of you is for a temporary use, which according to the current schedule of uses is conditional in all zones. And this temporary use is for an ice vending machine, as Landon described earlier. He will be leasing the property and is proposing minor site modifications, as he described, primarily for that circle drive and utility connections. And he'll be doing some demolition of that existing building and some trees in order to accommodate those items. And then for that gravel drive, he'll need to improve the culverts in the drainage ditch along North Main Street. Let's see, surrounding zoning in this area is C1 to the south, which is the Stubbs used car lot. And then you have the Centerton Cemetery, which is actually zoned R3 to the north, and then adjacent to R3 to the west and east. And then you also have the Homescape Realty office adjacent to the southeast corner, which is C1. There is floodplain on this property, as you can see in this exhibit. The southwest corner is in the floodplain, and a floodplain permit will be required with development application. The North Main is a planned minor arterial on the adopted master street plan, which is 90 feet of right of way and 45-foot half. That it is going to be tricky in this area with the cemetery. You can see the long short dashed line is the approximate location of that 45-foot right of way from the center line of the existing road, and it is well into the cemetery. So the city will have to do some pretty significant planning to accommodate a minor arterial on North Main. This diagram was attempted to give you a sense. If you limit his structure to the existing setback requirements of C1, that's that line furthest to the west in the middle of the property, using the planned future right-of-way plus the 50-foot front setback requirement. So that's one option for your consideration. The other would be possibly considering a 50 feet from the existing pavement, since this is a temporary use. And that second dimension there, just to the south of, kind of over where the existing building is, kind of shows you the approximate location of that. Let's see. I think Mr. Garner went through the planned site modifications pretty thoroughly. He's planning for to accommodate up to 5 vehicles in the gravel drive for stacking. He said that is plenty of stacking, judging from other locations' traffic for this type of use. He will need water connection with and a 3-phase electrical power for this use. And then there's also some condensation piping that will be needed as well. There will be lighting proposed with the development plans, including for security purposes, and just general lighting, and then again, demolition of existing structure and trees. There are some comp plan consistency items in your packets for your consideration, but in general, this area is within the Innovation Center designation for the kind of old downtown area, which kind of allows for unique local businesses to get their start. It's kind of an incubation type use or type concept, just in general. Whether this is consistent or inconsistent, I'm not sure, but that's for your consideration. And then there's also a list of conditions. He's proposing 3-year term of approval. And we talked through the setback consideration. We would need to see a large scale development plan since there will be site modifications. He'll likely need an RDOT permit to do the improvements within the RDOT right-of-way to the culverts and for the drives. And he'll be required the tenant will need to be responsible for maintaining the premises in good, clean, and non-hazardous conditions. ADA compliance is recommended, and owner accepts liability if non-ADA compliant. And then screening is proposed as sufficient evergreen landscape screening to be provided for visual and acoustic buffering to residential properties adjacent to vending machine uses. And then any outdoor storage of material shall be screened from public view. And then the rest of the proposed conditions in your packets are general conditions that you see often. I think that's all I have for you all, unless you have questions.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. Before we open it up to the public, any questions or comments from any of the commissioners?
Yeah, Jeff. So what does the word temporary mean? Does that mean, I heard 3 years, but what does temporary mean?
Well, that was one of my clarifying questions that I was going to ask Landon, because temporary in my mind and definition, Ben, means that it can be moved. And if I understand correctly, this one is more of a permanent fixture. So I'm correct. Maybe where you're going in the fact that it feels like it's more permanent than not. So that was one of my questions. And Landon, I don't know if you have any feedback on that. Is there a structure that's put in place and then this unit sits on it, or kind of describe the unit a little bit more? I mean, I saw the picture, but it's really hard to tell how it's designed to be temporary.
Absolutely. So this comes in and it actually sits on concrete blocks. And as the unit itself sits up on concrete blocks, I have to have access underneath it in case anything needs repair. And then the skirting is around the outside of it. And then it's fastened down with basically mobile home anchors, which withstand 150-mile-an-hour wind. All that's covered up by the skirting. Concerning its permanence, obviously I'm in this to stay, the longer the better for me. Most of my lease terms are 3 to 5 years in Northwest Arkansas. And if this unit had to be moved, it is something that can be moved. I set this with a very small crane, and once the unit is set onto a trailer, it just has about 16 concrete blocks that have to be removed from the premises, and the anchors are taken out of the ground, and it's just the same piece of ground that it came off of. So concerning a slab of any kind, I mean, there's nothing underneath it that would consider it to be permanent, if that helps.
So basically it's a permanent mobile structure is what we're looking at. I mean, this could be there for 20 years, correct?
Hypothetically, it could be. I've never had one in a location for 20 years, but I cannot sit here and tell you that I have a a lifeline for this. I couldn't honestly tell you that that it couldn't be longer than 3 to 5 years. That's correct.
But it is made to where it can be disassembled and relocated rather quickly, right? Basically, it's on footers, it's like a storage shed on footers. Right?
That's correct. The unit itself. So what you see in these pictures where the steps are, and you see there's it juts out with a skirting. The entire building is one unit. So it is not. It doesn't come apart. It doesn't. There's no piecing it together like a puzzle. It's just a unit that sits on a flatbed trailer that I could pull with a 1-ton truck.
But from a temporary perspective, then, if it was to not work, then you would pull the trailer out and we would be left with
a vacant lot.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions from any of the commissioners?
And Jeff, does that impact, if you go back to the slide previous, which one, or is it the setbacks, right? If it's permanent versus non-permanent, I know there was 2 different setbacks that were shown. Which one will we be looking at?
The dotted yellow line.
So with those 2 red lines, there's basically 2 different suggested placements, right? Based on whether it's permanent or temporary? Or did I mishear that?
Yeah, I think Nicole was just trying to point out there that yes, if this was to be a permanent structure in this area, then, based on the right of way, then that's where the building setback would be, yes.
Okay.
Jeff,
Basically,
my
we're
question
looking at that bottom red line if it's temporary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jeff, my question is, what if this unit becomes in disrepair? What are our assurances that this would still be something that would be, I guess, pleasing to look at for a temporary building, what you say, but we sure don't want something to come in disrepair right there in that location and not have any kind of requirement to repair it.
Yeah, certainly something that I'm sure we'll have discussion on here in a little bit, Tony.
And if I could say, obviously, if it's in disrepair, it does me no good. It's there to produce revenue, and from the standpoint of, if you were to drive around to some of my other machines in Northwest Arkansas, there are all of them are kept clean in a way that my entire purpose, obviously, is to make it a clean environment so people want to shop there. So from the standpoint of disrepair, I have never had a machine that is down for more than 5 days, and that's because it was waiting on parts.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the public, and then we'll come back and we'll allow for any additional questions or comments from any of the commissioners. So with that, I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing for conditional use 2105 ice it down ice vending machine at 391 North Main.
This is John. I motion to open the public hearing for conditional use 2105 ice it down.
This is Amber. I'll second.
Motion and a second to open the public hearing. Is anyone opposed? All right, Nicole, we'll go ahead and open it up now for anyone that wishes to speak. And again, if you join virtually, you can raise your hand, or if you join by phone, you can press *9*9, and then you can be recognized. Is there anyone that wishes to speak, Nicole?
There are no hands raised at the moment.
We'll do a second call for anyone that wishes to speak.
There are no hands raised.
And we'll do a third and final call for anyone that wishes to speak on the conditional use 2105.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
John, I motion to close the public hearing for 2105 ice it down.
This is Joey, a second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. Is anyone opposed? All right. I will now open it up to any additional comments or questions that any of the commissioners may have.
So I have no problems with the use. I think it's actually something that would probably work very well here. But with it being on Main Street, this will have to come through a LSD. I'd be looking for something that's not just a gravel drive, plop that building down and go. We're gonna have to make it look as good as we can, being right on the main drag of town, close to downtown. And that's just something I wanted to throw in here.
Joey, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, would we entertain an actual paved drive or something where, because that's on Main Street, right at the intersection with very high traffic, right? I mean, the rocks and stuff coming on the road and just being able to get on and off of the road onto that gravel drive would impede traffic.
I would love for it to be asphalt. I don't know what's in our code. Sometimes we do approve like temporary gravel stuff. But I guess that's what we'll have to look at when the large scale comes. And I don't know if the applicant has plans, if you can touch on that right now. Again, I don't have a problem with the use. It's not going to affect this decision tonight, but I think we'll all be looking for something with the large scale.
Parking lot at next to City Hall is gravel. Might keep that in mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if I could, just real quick, this is Landon again. And I have other locations that use gravel. And from the standpoint, I understand the concern with gravel coming onto Main Street. I've never had that issue approached in the other 5 locations that I have. With concrete or asphalt, that I think that impedes pretty good from the budgeting side of things. And I think it also, from the concrete and asphalt side, it kind of echoes a more of a permanence than a temporary structure.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, 5 years is kind of past temporary. Nicole or Donna or Diane, can you share some requirements?
What do you mean requirements?
As far as the paving material? Like I know for sure that the approaches onto the RDOT highway are probably going to have to be concrete, asphalt, something like that.
Correct.
Yeah, some kind of transitional, right? It just can't be just Main Street and then gravel, right?
I'm trying to remember what Rick, off of next to Harps, the food court that kind of went in on that little lot. Is that a gravel apron and drive?
They didn't redo the driveway. They just utilized what they had. I just put in one on 279 by the animal shelter. We had to pave to the right of way. That's free commercial type driveway. They're going to have to pave or concrete to the right of way line.
Landon, I want you, and I didn't know if you knew that or not, but it's not going to be able to be gravel all the way up to the roadway. So if it truly is the right of way, I'm just looking at.
Yes, sir. And that would be my question, because depending on which line we decide to look at here, because I mean, judging by some of the conversation we've had earlier, with the cemetery being where it is, with the 50-foot BSB, that's a long way from where, let's face it, the cemetery is going to be. So yeah, it would just
consider it as existing right of way, not future right of way.
Forgive me, sir. Say one more time.
They were going to consider it from existing right of way, not future right of way when they do this permit.
Understood.
And then, hey, Rick, off the top of your head, do you know what the drive distances are? Is it 150?
I think you're right.
Okay.
I was trying to kind of guess at what his spacing was here, but I think he's going to be close to that.
Okay.
Looks like 120.
Any other questions or comments from any of the commissioners? I would tell you that it feels more permanent than it does temporary to me. But that's, me sharing my opinion. Understanding at least 3 years, which is what he's asking for, but potentially 5 to 7 years. It is in the innovation part of the, land use plan. So the fact that there's, an opportunity for a new business to start is what we talk about. But, we want those businesses to also represent the city, which is, if we just go up the road a little bit, I think we had asked, Frank, when the utilities building was built, we didn't necessarily want to see metal, and he was able to at least put a nice front on the building. So, as we consider this, today there's some trees, there is a structure there, I'll call it. But I think if I'm reading through what Landon's trying to do, we would have a structure. There would be some lights that would be coming off, and then some gravel, with the understanding that there would have to be some sort of hard surface that leads up to the, that joins the main street. So just something to keep in mind as well. If there are no further questions or comments from any of the commissioners, then I would entertain a motion for conditional use 2105, the ice it down ice vending machine at 391 North Main.
Real quick, Jeff, I'm sorry. We're just looking at the use, right? How it's being used, not necessarily like Joyce said, all that when it will come back on large scale or final, final approvals, whether or not it's the driveway type, the permanent driveway versus temp driveway versus, paving and gravel, all that kind of stuff will come in later, right? We're just looking at, can you put an ice machine there, correct?
Correct. And so there would be a large scale development plan that would come before us at a later date that would include, the proposal from Landon, along with what is required, along with some things that we have that are in the packet as well when it comes to lighting and screening. Those would be things that we would have the opportunity to consider.
And can we alter the review schedule of that? Like you said, it seems more permanent in the type of business that's going there and the structure itself. Could you set a review more frequently than 3 years or 5 years as a condition?
Yes. We could set it at 1 year. We could set it at 2 years, but also understand that if we allow for the condition and there are complaints or there are things that we need to consider, then the conditional use can be revoked. Does that answer your question better?
Yes. Yeah.
Rather than us look at it every year, if we put 3 years and there was some reason for us to consider it, then there is an opportunity to do that.
Okay. In that case, I would motion to approve conditional use 2105 ice it up vending machine, ice vending machine.
This is Joey. I'll second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Todd, if you'll do a roll call for me, please.
Can I just confirm really quickly, are you approving the conditions as proposed? And do you have any other conditions that you would like to add based on your discussion?
I think there are some further questions. I don't know if it helps out or not, but I don't think we know exact. Well, let me back up. So we decided that gravel from entrance to exit is not allowable, that there would have to be some sort of hard surface that complies with RDOT. It sounds like the other commissioners are open to gravel, although the preference would be a hard surface. It would be for 3 years. We would want to see the lighting in regards to the large scale development and any sort of screening or landscaping as well.
And what about the setback?
I was under the impression that the setback was based on it being a temporary structure. I mean, if it's going to be classified, and I think if looking at the definition, it classifies as a temporary structure, whether that's going to be used for longer than what we would consider temporary, it being on footers and trailer or trailerable, I guess you would say. It's technically a temporary structure. So I was looking at the 50 foot from pavement, that setback you had there, assuming that that's the one that would be used. Is that correct?
This is Lorraine. I'd like to interject on this just a little bit. In the C1 commercial district, the front setback can be reduced. And what does it say, to 25 or to, the purpose of the C1 district is to move the buildings up close to the sidewalk. And I don't have my cheat sheet or anything with me. What is the setback for C1?
It's 50 feet and it can be
And
modified.
by the Planning
with
Commission.
approval from the Planning Commission. And I don't think
Okay.
it specifies, they could bring it all the way up to, get that streetscape look.
Yeah, okay.
On the front and side property lines.
And one thing that I want to bring up on this is that if that building is too far back, it's going to be in the floodplain, and then we have a problem with that.
Which I think is the reason that we were leaning, because if we go on the 50 foot and it's only 8 foot in length, then it would not be in the floodplain. Is that, am I looking at that correct?
Yeah, the way I thought it would only be 8 feet past that that bottom red line, right? Where it says approximately 50 foot from pavement. You would only be 8 feet behind that max, right? Because it's an 8 by 20, right? The 20 is the long part.
24.
24, yeah.
Correct.
Are you proposing it east-west or north-south facing? Does that make sense? So,
I'm sorry, Nicole, is that a question for me, ma'am?
yes, I'm sorry, Landon.
No, you're-
Will the
you can-
shorter 8-foot side be facing the street, or the longer 24-foot side be facing the street?
My proposal would be for the same configuration as that building is in now. So that picture would offer 8 feet is all you would be visible from the street and 24 long. So it wouldn't take up as much visible room from the street. It would be longer like the building shows here.
Okay, well, in that case, then you're correct, Lorraine. I think it might be close to touching that floodplain if you 24 feet past that 50 foot line puts it right at that dotted line almost, right? Without having GIS looking at it, I'm just kind of ballpark it, yeah.
But I think in that case, then we would allow him to
move
come
forward.
back with a proposal that says instead of going east and west, it needs to go north and south. Or instead of 50, I need 40. Because we don't have the exact, I think we could allow for that. Right, Nicole, when it comes to the large scale?
Yeah, he could always ask for an amendment to his conditional use permit, if I'm following correctly, if he needs it once he gets his site plan together. Or, you know, if he needs to move it north or something to keep out of the floodplain. I'm sure there's things to be sorted out with the site plan.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, I would continue with my motion in that case, then, knowing that there's going to be a lot of questions and things to clear up at the large scale when we see that, because we could always just not approve the large scale until we get those conditions met. Correct?
That is correct.
Are there any that we actually need to sort out right now?
I think that's where we were going, which was we should start at the 50 foot, right? I mean, I think that would be our preference, at least my preference is unless somebody disagrees, we would want it to kind of, fit in with that. I don't think this is one of those that we would want right up to the street and then put parking behind. I'm guessing, Landon, that you probably want to use the foundation. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. No, it actually helps me if I don't have to. None of my other machines are on foundations. So, and for the commission's sake, I'm willing to move this. This is not solidified, and we can go through this in large scale. To Nicole's point, we can move it north, I can't move it south, but we can move it farther north, and I have no issues. As far as it does not have to be in that exact placement. That was just for picture in the mind, kind of give everybody a rough.
Okay.
I think, Jeff, if you move it back to the 50, it also help your stacking coming in off the road as people are getting ice and leaving.
Yep. Okay. Nicole, does that cover everything that you were looking for? I think we were kind of going down that path.
I think so. Laureen, did you want a condition specifically to keep the structure out of the floodplain? Or does your flood code basically cover that?
Well, if he puts it in the floodplain, then it needs to be secure. Or, we would have to look at that potential for that. I would rather that it be out of the floodplain. And I believe that he could do that with what he has here right now. But is he basically he's putting it where the previous structure was, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. But that structure is considerably longer than what it's about twice as long east to west as the unit that I'm proposing is.
Okay.
And he has a little bit of flexibility. So if the planning commission wants to entertain a motion or a condition to make sure that the structure stays out of the floodplain, is that your preference, Laureen?
Well, just definitely out of the floodway. If it slightly encroaches in the floodplain, depending on the elevations and so forth, it may be acceptable. We just have to do a floodplain permitted.
But we'll see how that large scale, right?
Yeah, I think the guidance, though, is what they're looking for, and I would simply say we would most likely want to keep it out of the floodplain.
Yes, that's preferred. With it not being secure, it is preferable, because if that should expand further than these lines, I mean, these are just, these are guesses with analysis, but you just don't want anything to be possibly taken down the floodway. So But we do, like in the parking lot, we have temporary buildings there. And it all depends what that elevation is. There's some areas where this expands to it. It's only, it might be 6 inches. So that would not be terribly bad for him to have a building up on blocks. That would be acceptable. So we would just have to look at that on where he would encroach in that and what those elevations were. But
Okay.
definitely not in the floodway.
Okay. So we do have a motion, and I believe we have a second. Is that correct? Todd, will you do a roll call vote for me, please?
Tony Davis,
Yes.
Jerry Harris,
Yes.
Amber Beal,
Yes.
Joey Engel,
Yes.
Ben Lewis,
No.
John Sessoms,
Yes.
Devin Murphy,
Yes.
Craig Langford,
Yes.
and Jeff Seifarth.
And I'm a no as well. Thanks, Landon.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda this evening is subdivision 1901, the Hilldale final plat at Holloway Road and South Main Street. It is R3 zoning, 40 acres, 140 single family lots. Let's see. Patrick, are you still with us?
Yes, sir.
Do you want to give us just a brief overview?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we brought this Hilldale subdivision before you guys a little over a year ago through with a preliminary plat. Contractors built the subdivision out. We've had final inspections. I believe they've addressed all the staff comments. My understanding is they're providing bonds to the city or getting those put together. And I've got all the closeout documents submitted to staff. I think we're in good shape and ready to final this one out. Get houses under construction.
All right. Thanks, Patrick. Donna, you want to cover staff comments?
Sure. Like Patrick said, we're in pretty good shape. So this is 140 single family lots and 2 detention lots, tract A and tract B, on about 40 acres at the southwest corner of Holloway and Main. We have received covenants. There's just a few minor changes. We did receive a revision, so we just need to get that to Brian to look over. The bonds for streets and drainage and water and sewer have received estimates approval. We should be getting those tomorrow before the special council meeting. There were some waivers that were approved with preliminary plat approval. 40 foot of right-of-way is being dedicated with final plat along both Holloway and Main Street, as those are both minor arterials. The adjacent street agreement had both of those being constructed. We have reviewed those in the field and accepted the improvements. The record drainage report has been accepted by staff. We have gone out to site. There's very minor cleanup that we noted in the last final inspection. And we just haven't quite been out to site yet to see if that's been taken care of. Record documents have been accepted. We've gotten final plat ready, and we're just gathering up signatures on that. And so, yeah, it's in good shape, just gathering up the last couple of things.
Thank you, Donna.
All in all, well done.
Thank you, Donna. Any comments or questions from any of the commissioners? If not, I would entertain a motion for subdivision 1901, the Hilldale final plat, again at Holloway Road and Main Street, R3, 40 acres, 140 lots.
This Jerry, I make a motion to approve subdivision 1901 Hilldale final plat.
This is Tony, I second.
Motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? All right, thanks, Patrick. Good luck.
Thank you, guys.
All right, next on the agenda this evening is development 2107, the Centerton Family Eye Care expansion. This is at 101 Dawn Drive, Lot B, also the Ridgefield edition. It is C2 and it's 0.77 acres. Dr. Petty, are you on to give us an overview, or is someone from Morrison Shipley on?
It's pretty late in the night. You want to table this one, Jeff?
I can't see, Todd. I don't know.
Pretty funny.
Oh, so sorry, Sky.
They're good. I loved you, Jeff. I'm not sure if Jimmy's on here or not. This is an expansion for our clinic on the south side of the building. We're looking to add on approximately 2,300 square feet to the back, add some parking on the west side of the property and on the north side as well, just to accommodate our growth. So looking forward to it.
So to just a couple of questions that may, just so in case they come up later. Today, you guys have 3 doctors in there. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, we do.
Is that your intention is to keep 2, or do you think there'll be possible expansion?
No, it'll just, at this time, it'll be my wife and I full-time, and then a mostly full-time associate. So just 3 of us. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I see 7 additional parking spots. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Well, hang with us just in case we have any other
You bet.
questions. Diane, this is you, I believe.
Yes, sorry if I have been making you guys dizzy with my attempting to switch screens and steer. So as Dr. Petty stated, they are adding additional space to their existing building at the intersection of Dawn Drive and West Centerton Boulevard. And they are currently zoned as C2 because this is an existing business. And Highway 102 is a major arterial. And of course, the Highway Department is going to be widening this at some point in time, hopefully in the near future. So we have requested that they show or provide the extra right-of-way for West Centerton Boulevard. And I apologize. They have submitted a new set of documents. I have not had a chance to look at them yet. So Sky, don't freak out if this is not what you're expecting to see. I don't think there were any major changes to it. So I don't want you to freak out and go, wait a minute, that's not what I said. They are required to have a total of 31 parking spaces and including 2 ADA accessible spaces, one of those being van. They are proposing 31 total stalls with the 2, so they are meeting the code requirement for that. Staff did have concerns with these 2 parking spaces down here, which we understand are going to be for the doctors. For them having to get out, it would require having to back into a space. And that would be difficult if there's a car parked there. We did discuss this with the engineer, and the property owner does state that they don't go anywhere during the day. So it shouldn't be an issue. But so that is something for you guys to consider. And also when we talked to the engineer and the developer, when they first brought this in as a concept, this entrance is pretty tight to be able to get in and out, especially in any longer vehicles. We did request that they kind of fix the radius on this one, but they did decline that they didn't want to do that. So that would be another consideration for you guys. Also today, of course, utilities are already all in place because, again, it's existing. They did provide a drainage letter because the drainage would have been, gosh, from back in like 2004, I do believe. But it has been approved by staff and the city engineer. As far as lighting for this property, there is no site lighting beyond what's attached to the building. And they are down lights, possibly some up lights that will be on the building. They're not proposing any parking lot lighting. So a lighting plan wasn't included. It wasn't included back when this was completed years ago. But that is, something for y'all to consider. And landscaping, let me pause and get to the landscaping. Whoops.
You're always going to want to see trees.
They are proposing to do, these are photos of what they currently have on the site. And these black areas here are what's existing. And they are going to add additional landscaping along the building for the expansion and for this new area here. They don't have a specific plan as far as how many trees are going to be here, how many boxwoods, but they did provide a list of trees and shrubs and things like that that they are going to utilize. But of course, all of the existing will remain.
Diane, I consider my eye correction to be very well. I can't read that. What's it say?
Well, if I could figure out how to zoom in when I'm in this.
Don't mess it up. Don't mess it up.
I said, do you really want to challenge me right now? Looks like boxwoods,
Thanks,
Japanese
John.
Burberry. I think I need to go see Dr.
I
Petty.
think I see crepe myrtle
Crepe
on there.
myrtle, holly.
Yeah.
So
Holly.
it's going to look like what they currently have. Obviously, they won't be that large because they will be new, but so they kind of included that. So you can have an idea of what's already existing.
Okay.
And we have just a few outstanding comments. Not much, but again, I think those have probably been resolved with their new submittal. I just have not had time to get to it.
So today there's no lighting, is that correct?
The only lighting is on the building. Dr. Pebby, maybe you could state where it is, but it's just on the building. There's no
Sure.
current lighting in the parking lot.
That's correct. We have can lights in the eaves. We do have the SWEPCO. We've got a light pole that casts down on the front north side of the building. But I'm very cognizant of light pollution and our neighbors, and I really would rather not light the parking lot up and just keep it with can lights in the eaves, and maybe some up lights in the landscaping, but that's a maybe.
I'm just trying to understand the Carol. Does it light your parking lot? It's not attached to the building, is it?
No, sir. No, it's attached to the pole. They're kind of close to 102, and it just casts light on the parking lot and the north side of the building.
Okay. I guess my only thought process is, in the new area, we should consider something to at least illuminate, whether it's from the building, maybe, just because it gets back to a little bit farther. And I don't know if you guys have considered that or if Diane has mentioned that to you, but I think that would be one thing just to consider, especially it's tight parking for one thing. And then if people are going to have to back out, may just be something to consider. And I don't know if you guys looked at that or not, but maybe something off the building that would just illuminate the parking lot a little bit.
Okay.
They are, excuse me, they are going to be adding lighting at the back of the building. It will be like what they have currently,
The can
where
lighting.
it would be the can lighting, which would illuminate it some. But as of right now, I had asked if they could show where those can lights would be on the building, but I think the building's not completely, conceptualized to know exactly where those lights would be, because that has been requested. Can we at least know, where they're going to be?
Yeah, Dr. Petty, are those automated or do you guys have to manually turn those on and off?
It's on a solar sensor, Jeff. So the can lights, and then we've got a gooseneck light that casts down on the front north side of the building as well, and those are all just censored.
Okay. Just thinking, from a safety perspective, and it is getting pretty long back there from a parking, just consider, something maybe back in that corner or something that would illuminate a little bit of that. So just from a safety perspective, for whether it's patients or it's you guys, if you're parking back there, just something to consider.
Sure. I'll talk to Jimmy about that.
Today you guys parked back there. I know it's going farther, but today you guys parked back there and you already back out. You're just going to add some footage. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. Megan and I both park in the back, and that works out fine for us. Because what was already mentioned, we generally don't leave the property all day. And yeah, backing out's not a problem because usually there's not many people there whenever we leave. So we just back right out and head out. So.
Any other comments or questions from any of the commissioners?
I want to look at the landscape plan.
Well, Joey, if you can see, I think you did it on purpose. If
it comes,
then you're welcome to criticize it, Joey. But yes, I think it seems like it's going to match up similar to what exists today.
It looks to be just all grass. Oh, okay.
Hey, look, I figured out how to zoom in. You just don't get a full screen.
I will say, Joey, that there is a lot of parking. There's certainly less landscape, but I think he's unfortunately with the location of the building. He has the two up front, a little bit on the side, one in one of the corners. I think it's tough to put a lot of tall trees in there, I think.
Sure. No, I mean, would there be an opportunity from the applicant to maybe plant a few along the highway, maybe just ornamental something? Yeah. We have a water line up there. There's a sewer line, but there does look to be some room in the property north of the water line. Diane, can you go up to I guess it's the site plan?
Yes, hang on just a second.
I mean, maybe something just like 3 to 4 up there. Not asking for a whole row, but just something to break it up.
Is there a slope up there? I'm trying to think of what that.
So the grading plan does show some. It looks to be kind of a gentle slope. The slope is outside of the property. So north of that dark line, there's a decent slope, but that's all kind of gently sloping to the ditch That's inside of the property. Yeah, right there.
I have a few concerns on that. One is, investing money in landscaping, which is not a problem. I'm a big gardener, big landscaper, but with the potential expansion of 102, that getting ripped right out, and also visibility of not only the building but also of the monument sign we have out there. Patients have a hard enough time, surprisingly, finding the office. I'm afraid that would be a deterrent if we were to put a row of trees in front.
So I completely understand that. We could cluster them to one side or the other. There's certainly some opportunities out there. You have some valid concerns, but I also think, if you went anywhere else, you would have a lot more trees that you'd have to plant. I'm just asking, I don't, at this point, until we get the landscape ordinance seated, we can't require it, but I will tell you what you have now would be a far cry from what the proposed landscape ordinance would require. I'll leave it at that.
Any other questions or comments from any of the commissioners?
I got one question. So he's expanding on the rear part of the building. So if we've approved the rest of it with the landscaping as is, I'm just kind of curious, even as moving forward, if this wasn't Dr. Petty's expansion or if it's another one, are we really looking at landscaping for the additional area, or are we looking at landscaping for an entire project? I mean, because he's already been approved for what he has there and the landscaping that's there.
Sure. So Todd, typically what happens is any non-conforming, that would be non-conforming, so they have to bring it up to code. In those situations, there are some concessions that have to be made just because it's a existing site that wasn't necessarily designed for the new code. Now, with that said, what I normally see is you would have to calculate a certain number of trees, and maybe the spacing on those or the location of those couldn't be exactly per the code, but you could essentially take what you would be required to do and put them where you can.
Okay.
Or at least make some attempt to get close to code. And I think
Right,
that was
yeah,
concept is now that we are changing this and adding that building, it's a far cry from a long way from where that code should be with just the existing.
Thanks.
Yeah, and just a reminder, I know Joey mentioned it earlier, but currently we don't have a landscaping code. It's basically that the planning commission can recommend or request additional landscaping or changes.
I think that's where Joey left it, and was noted. So if there are no other questions or comments, then I would entertain a motion for development 2107, the Centerton Family Eye Care expansion. Again, it's at 101 Dawn Drive.
This is John. I'll motion to approve development 2107 Centerton Family Eye Care expansion with consideration of landscaping.
Just Devin, a second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is anyone opposed? All right. Thanks, Dr. Petty. Good luck.
You bet. Thank you, guys.
All right. Under other business, the Title 14 zoning code adjustments, Title 14 zoning code amendments, changes to high density residential districts, and it says discussion. That scares me, Nicole, at 8:45.
Yeah, and I don't think the intent is to have a discussion. It's mostly just to give you guys a heads up. And Diane, I have to apologize. I didn't think I'd just steal your screen. I thought it would ask you, but I think I just stole your screen.
That is quite okay. I was surprised, but pleasantly so that I was like, hey,
She
look,
set
she's
it
in it.
up that way,
Awesome.
Diane. Don't let her
Yeah, I
fool you.
know.
She
She
set it
was
up
ready
that way.
to jump in if I screwed up too badly.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, and Lorene, feel free to jump in as well, but we wanted to give you guys a heads up because this is a public hearing that will be in front of you next meeting. The amendments have been published, and notices have been published for these amendments, and you all have previously recommended to set that public hearing for June 1st. So that's just right around the corner. And we wanted to just let you guys know that the intent and to give you guys a little bit of I guess something to look at to understand what's being proposed is that the R3 high density residential district is being proposed to be broken into 4 other districts. So we'd have an R3 single family, an R3D for duplex, and then an R3 M6, which would be a medium high density multiplex residential district for 3 to 6 dwelling units, and then an R4 multifamily for high density multifamily residential. As we were jumping into this, it was pretty clear that the multifamily needed a little bit more work to get to be usable. As you guys know, a lot of the apartment complexes have had to use the PUD tool in order to achieve compliance with our code. And so we wanted to get the bones of those districts a little bit more in line with something that could be achievable. And I won't go into the proposed revisions. They'll be in your packet for next meeting to review. But I did want to say that the intent for this is to flesh out, especially those multifamily districts, a little bit more. Because we were kind of given the June deadline to get it in front of council, primarily to get the single family and duplexes out of the realm of multifamily moving forward. We needed to kind of get the bones done. And so we're looking at this as kind of phase 1 and phase 2, with phase 1 being the bare bones changes, and then phase 2 getting a little bit more of the fleshy, meaty code requirements in place. And all that with the zoning code audit in our purview, that our entire code hopefully will get an overhaul in the if not near future, the foreseeable future, potentially. So does anybody have any questions or want any more detail? And or Lorene, do you want to add anything to that crazy description?
I might just add, as we were going through this with staff and the building code, our residential townhome duplex, we need to call that twin homes. And then we also will need to distinguish between single family attached dwelling units and townhomes, where they can be built like 5 units and they could have a different type of construction. So there are some things that staff I'm going to say will be recommending as part of this clarification on these zones also.
Right, and that discussion kind of took place around the schedule of uses and whether a twin home and townhouse construction wanted or needed to be considered in these R3 districts, because these districts primarily are, especially the R3 multiplex district that we're proposing, it's 1 or 2 structures on a single lot with 3 to 6 units on each lot. So potentially that could be a townhouse type structure, except the townhouse is typically something that could be subdivided in the future. And if it's not constructed appropriately, it cannot be subdivided. And so the clarification is that we're thinking is needed is so that we can determine whether or not a structure in a district can be subdivided or if it must remain a single development for all times. Does that make sense? And maybe that didn't help.
I like that, Nicole, because that you know what I think what Lorene was alluding to is that the zoning classification will be adjusted for the construction type. And I think you could have a lot of different zoning classifications that way. I think I like the way that you just said it, where it's set up as if it can be split or not, which actually dictates the construction type and maybe limits some of the zoning classes that we have. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Is that right, Lorene?
Well, I don't know if it limits the number of districts. I'm looking at it as more of the townhouse multifamily, the way that it is set up. It's actually single family attached is how that is set up. Townhomes under the building code, the way I understood it, they can be built like apartments. So, okay, I know we need to go back and get clarification on that, but that's what I had understood.
I guess my recommendation would be to try to reduce the number of overall classifications we have and we're splitting out, just to make it a little easier, if that makes sense to do that. If it doesn't, and we need to pretty much hammer down each construction type, I mean, we can do that. I just don't see that done that often.
Okay. And we started the conversation with staff today and asked them to continue reviewing these amendments prior to June 1st. And if there's any other topics that need to come to your attention, we will bring them to you at that time. Otherwise, you'll find this. With these changes, by the way, is a revision to our zoning map. We're going to be remapping and redistricting, so that map is also published and will be in your packets for consideration.
Hey, Nicole, is it also possible, ideally it'd be great where these would almost line up with the comp plan too. I know the comp plan is very vague, but, and I haven't really dug in to see if that's even feasible, but it would be really cool to say, where it says medium low density housing, well, we could specify that only includes these types of zonings. And, we don't have one type of zoning that can accomplish two different classifications that are called out on the comp plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think our districts right now aren't a perfect fit for the land use plan, which is part of what the zoning code audit is looking at, is the consistency between the two. But I think in general, we can probably get it closer and kind of make a little bit better definition. And for instance, we decided to call all of the R3 districts medium high. So we have low density residential, medium density residential, and now medium high density residential. And then high density residential is just the apartment R4 district.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we're trying to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be helpful for us developers, everybody, public,
It does get a little bit confusing with the R3 single family because that density actually fits within the low medium designation of the comp plan, but we're calling it medium high, so that's a little bit confusing, but I don't know that it'll be perfect.
Okay.
Any other thoughts or questions? Lorene, did you have anything else?
Not really. A couple of our main discussions that we had with staff was the height of public assembly buildings and the height of buildings that would be allowed in each zone. So if you would like to do some research and have thoughts when this is presented, that would be great. And we have, Nicole has notes out there. This copy out in the Dropbox with our notes, Nicole?
It will be. I kind of reworked it so that you could see exactly what changed from the original R3. And I think that's a little bit clearer. The thing that was
Okay, thank you.
published just shows the clean document, if you will. So it doesn't necessarily show the changes. So this will be made available in the Dropbox.
Okay. And I think that those were the main things that we had most discussion over, was the height of the buildings that would be allowed in each zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think our initial discussion down there that we were going to get a little bit of guidance from Paul, maybe on from a fire department perspective, correct?
Well, they don't. They look at it as far as structural and what they would have to do. For the zoning part of it, we need to look at what is the height that would not be considered obtrusive in that zone.
Okay.
But we did have that was part of the conversation today with fire and building, and Rick was there, and staff in general was invited. So we did start those conversations to get input. But yeah, the zoning consideration for height is a little bit different than fire and building, just in terms of what it's trying to achieve, which is compatibility. And yeah, like Lorraine said, not wanting it to be an obtrusive height in a single family district. Okay. Anything else? And I think that's all I've got.
Okay. So the other thing under other business is we do need to add call it a motion, if you will, to remove the approval for the track split 2106, correct? Since it was a part of the administrative approvals.
Yeah, that was all right, Jeff. That was my motion, I believe, at the beginning. So I will motion to amend the approval of the ratification of administrative remove that track split. Which one was it?
2106.
Yes, 2106. Yes.
I think Amber made the motion. John made the second.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Amber. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm still here.
Let's see, which one are we on?
The very first one, ratification of the administrative approvals.
Oh, okay. So we're just redoing.
We need to amend it to remove A, track split 2106.
Remove A. Okay. All right. I'll make a motion to ratify the administrative approvals with the exception of item A.
It's John. I'll resecond.
All right. We have a motion to amend and a second. Is anyone opposed? All right. Thank you, guys. Under announcements, I added something to announcements. I know that kids are getting out of school, vacations are going to start. And even though we are mobile in a lot of cases, I also want everyone to enjoy vacation. So if you know of dates coming up, as much in advance as you can let us know, please do. And so if you have something planned where you're going to be away, please let us know.
So Jeff, I just looked at the one you're going to miss, and boy, you picked a good one.
That's been on the calendar for a while, Joey, but I appreciate the comment there.
To miss it?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
missing
I've had the tickets
work?
for about 2 months now, so.
I'm just giving crap, man. It's but right now we have items A through K.
All right. Let me see. We do have a joint work session this week. A couple things about this. It's X and A is actually going to be there to have an overview and give us some information. The master street plan, the land use plan. So there's been a lot of work behind the scenes, several meetings that have taken place. So this would be it's planned to be a joint work session for us, a joint session for the council's invited as well. There's actually an agenda that's been prepared since we'll all be together, so that it meets all the requirements as far as notification. So I would encourage you guys. I know that I believe Jerry has said that he cannot be there, but I would encourage everybody to be there. Good discussion. And I think it continues to lead us down the path of where we're going. And so, if and again, so I would encourage you. The next tech review meeting is 5/27. There's a council meeting on 6/8. And our next planning commission meeting is on 6/1.
Hey, Jeff, just to be clear, we're meeting in the same room that we met for the industrial presentation.
Correct.
Okay.
The meeting on Thursday will be at the Centerton Utilities Building, which is on Main Street.
All right.
Okay.
Jeff, this is Jerry.
Yes, sir.
Next planning commission meeting on 6/1. I will be unable to attend that meeting also. We are, my grandson is getting married in Missouri, and they have asked me to perform the wedding ceremony for them. So I will be out of town on June the 1st.
All right. Well, congratulations.
Hey, while we're doing that, I will send the email, but I will be out on let's see here, the 6/15 meeting.
All right.
You mean if you're on vacation, you don't have to come?
That's not what I said, because you took a long vacation, and the only reason you haven't come back because you can't get gas.
I'll be in Mexico. I'm not sure how the Wi-Fi is down there.
Laying by the pool. I don't want to see the pool in the background. So, are there other announcements as well? Tony, did you have an
Yes,
announcement?
I do have an announcement. I want to let everyone know that we will be losing Nicole back to regional planning. We are looking at her last day probably being June 11th for the city. I know they'd like to have her as soon as possible. So
Denied.
Denied.
Yeah.
Denied.
Nope. Nobody approved that.
So
Definitely not enough notice and no.
yeah. So you'll
Nicole, we're gonna miss you.
Thank you guys. I'm gonna miss you. You guys
What
have
are-
been
what
an
are-
amazing commission to work for and on behalf of.
What are you gonna be doing?
I'm going to work for the Regional Planning Commission, Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission, doing regional planning.
Awesome. Well, we'll still get to bug you.
You will indeed, and I will still be involved, just at a different level.
Okay, you can still come to our meetings if you get bored.
I might, especially if they're virtual.
Yeah.
No, you won't.
Very cool. Very cool, Nicole.
Thank you.
Nicole, this is Jerry. I just want to say you've been a real blessing to me to work with.
Oh, thank you, Jerry. Like I said, I've loved working with you guys. It's been wonderful.
All right. Any other announcements? All right. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
This is
That's
Joey.
Jerry. I make motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Todd, do whoever you want. We have a motion and a second. Is anyone opposed?
John got walked all over right there.
Telling you.
He can have the third.
I'll third it.
Guys, see
I'll
you
third
later.
it.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.